Hey, Jaybirds, it's Jay again. This time with something not dealing with wargaming at all. In fact, we are here to talk about a movie. This is a first JayView. Alright, we're going to talk about the newest and the biggest movie to hit theaters, Star Wars The Last Jedi, Episode 8. Now, this movie has had a lot of hype around it, and we've had some mixed reviews so far. Now, I watched it 2 nights ago. I have that perk, and I waited till now to release it so that everyone can kind of get a moment to digest the movie they've watched. Now, this first part of the video is not going to contain any spoilers. I'm just going to give a general kind of review of it. Then after that point, we're going to get into some serious spoilers. So when you hear me say spoilers, go ahead and click off. If you don't want to hear them, go watch the movie, come back, and then watch the rest of it, and then we'll talk about it ad nauseum. So, my first initial thoughts about Star Wars The Last Jedi. I thought it was a good movie. I enjoyed it. It's definitely an A-minus. It's not really anything that's going to win any kind of serious critical awards, in my mind. But it's definitely a well-told story, and very interesting, and probably number 2 in the Star Wars universe, with Rogue One being the number 1. This story is a continuation. It's obviously not going to have, the vast amounts of exposition that the first one kind of sort of had with introducing Rey, introducing, these new characters. We're reintroducing older characters into the story. I don't think I have to go, spoiler alert to let it be known, this one deals with Luke to a great amount. One of the things that I really liked about it was that it simply told the story. It didn't try to assume to be greater than it was. The exposition was solid. There wasn't a whole lot of just one solid scene dealing with the exposition. It dealt well with characters interchanging. The only issue I found with it was the plot, for the most part, was once again just an action flick. It didn't try to really challenge the viewer. It didn't try to really impart any sort of message. It didn't really try to be anything surprisingly different. And so because of that, it falls into more of your just simple escape literature rather than something that's interpretive. Something that has a whole lot of meanings in it. I mean, granted, it has meanings, but it's not something that really just blows your mind or just tells a story that's really well done or leaves a heavy impact. You go, you enjoy it, it's well done. There's nothing particularly wrong with it, but nothing particularly amazing about it. Definitely worth a watch. Definitely one of the top Star Wars movies. Definitely not something I would, say is going to win a whole lot of awards. But still, very solid movie. Okay, so now we're going to hit spoiler land. Spoiler alert. Once again, warning you. If you don't like spoilers, click away. I'm going to give you a count of 5. Screw it, I'm not counting to 5. So, here we go. The story opens up with, the first major scene is really dealing with the Resistance being more or less hounded into having one final base, which is kind of, in a way, a parallel to Hoth, which had me worried at first. But, they have a good, solid space flight, space battle, and it's very entertaining and fun. But you get to see the cost of war. You see an entire flight of bomber crews get taken out. Now, my biggest gripe about this scene was the standard inside, learning part of me going, that's not how space works, god dang it. But, you have to let that go and just enjoy the film. They had a part here that ties in later that's very important if you're paying attention. A very important member of the crew later, Rose, her sister, dies in the scene, and it's kind of, it's hard to watch. In that regard, and it's very poignant. The only problem is they kind of cast Poe Dameron as sort of he doesn't really care that he's lost that many troops. You don't really see him ever have a moment where he goes, crap, I lost that many guys. He's used to this, he's battle hardened, which I would like if it wasn't Poe Dameron. If it was the character from Rogue One, the main male leading of Rogue One, yeah, he would be that hardened, but Poe Dameron just sees it as, oh, that's just whatever, that's what happened, I just lost a whole flight of people I work with, whatever. My biggest gripe with that scene. Biggest plus, awesome space fight. Got to see Leia, who's really coming to terms with how much life has been lost in this fight against, the Empire, now the First Order, which I thought they could have delved a little harder into, but they didn't. I think they did that because they wanted to have only a certain amount of screen time. Next thing we open up with is have the scene with basically Rey meeting with Luke Skywalker. And the main issue I had with the initial meeting is it was built up so harshly. I was ready for it. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? And Luke throws a lightsaber over his shoulder, which I thought could have been done well if they hadn't just had a comedic scene with all this like water shooting everywhere. No one is going to stop the guy that just stumbled from sick bay into, walking around with all this stuff on. No one's going to stop him, check if he's okay. No, they're apparently not paying any kind of attention to the guy that has a suit on that's shooting water all over the electronic surfaces. Anyway, that would lighten my mood. I wasn't ready for a hard-hitting scene, and so my mood was light, and it came off as comical rather than a serious dismissal, and because of that, it colored the rest of my reaction to the scene. And because of that, I didn't care for the introduction from Rey to Luke. I think if they had opened with Rey meeting Luke, it would have been a much harder scene because it would have picked up right off, and then dealt with the space battle. But then again, it's director's decision, but I kind of didn't like that humor. You'll find as I do more and more JayViews, I don't like humor. I like humorous situations. I don't like humor. Anyway, in the next few deals is basically Rey dealing with trying to coax Luke into teaching her the Jedi way, and eventually, of course, he relents. And, which the issue with that is that I never had a moment's thought where I thought, well, Luke's not going to teach her. That would have been interesting had it actually been a series that treated itself in such a way where I would have had a moment's doubt that Luke wouldn't have, taught her. But never once I think, oh, Luke's not going to teach her. It's, oh, Luke's going to teach her. I'm just waiting. I'm just killing time until then. Which was cool. I mean, you got a little exposition between the characters. You got a little built of a relationship between them. You got Luke dealing with the fact that basically his student is now effectively one of the most evil beings in the galaxy. You get to see sort of a twinning relationship between Kylo Ren and Rey, which I thought was actually the coolest part of it, because for the past 3 years, we've all been theorizing as to who Rey is, and now we get to see who Rey is. And in this case, this lends strongly to Rey being a Solo, right? And everyone's thinking, oh, she's a Solo. And I'm like, I personally hated that theory. I wanted her to be a Palpatine or nobody on that. But she kind of starts developing this relationship, and she starts in the Force talking to Kylo Ren, even though he's not there. And then eventually Rey gets Luke to start teaching her. Then, okay, at that point, while that's going on, we also have the issue with now the Empire's got the Rebels pretty much screwed. They're on the run. They've managed to track them through light speed, which is something new, but something lovely. They don't actually give us a whole lot of technobabble. They say they're tracking us through light speed, which is all we really need to know. We don't need to know. And they figured out a way to deal with it, and they need some sort of code breaker to make it happen. All right. And so Finn is now doing something useful. He's trying to escape originally desert, and he meets this mechanic who is guarding this drop pod. She's sitting there crying in the corner, and he's like, she sees him, what she's doing. She recognizes him. He's this great hero, and he's got to escape the First Order. He's so brave. He's a hero of the Resistance. And lo and behold, she's a sister of the bomber crew that's died. It's hinted at with her medallion, and you pick that up. Oh yeah, she's definitely, that's her sister. And she mentions that. She's so proud. And she already talks about how she had to stun 2 other people, and then she realizes Finn's trying to desert. And so she has to stun a hero, and you can see it break in her face. One of the best moments of the movie, in my opinion. So she's hauling him away, and they figure out how to track the fly space. A little bit of technobabble, not that much. And they figure out they gotta disable it. So Finn and her propose a plan to Poe. They then go to this alternate planet, find this codebreaker. She goes find the codebreaker. Now, my biggest gripe with this scene is pretty much at this point, they're trying to show a lot of things about the civilian life of people under the First Order, And it kind of lends itself more to the argument, of the Empire not being that evil outside the expanded universe in the canon of the original movies. You see this, sort of like really, nice place, and all these people gambling and whatnot, and it's basically Vegas, Space Vegas. So they're in Space Vegas, and he's wondering why it's so beautiful and such a nice city. He's wondering why Rose hates it, and Rose hates it, and she tells him to look closer, and she starts seeing the slavery, the mistreating the animals, and honestly, that scene could have used a lot more punch. It was a nice idea. I liked what they were going with it. I liked that they were trying to show that the First Order, that this is them, basically the 1% riding on the back of the 99, but I felt like it was a bit rushed, and because of that, the scene lacked the punch it needed. Good idea though. That brings them into contact, and I'm not going to go through the whole spiel, but basically brings them into contact with a particular code breaker, not the one they're looking for, but this other fellow played by Benicio del Toro. This is my biggest gripe of it. That character is probably the best idea they had to introduce. The only problem is he's seen as not that. You don't see a whole lot of the character, and I'm hoping we'll see him more in the third story, but he's a code breaker, he's a hacker, he's a scoundrel, and he brings up a very important part. They're like, oh, these guys they're supplying the First Order, and that's all they do is they make money selling to the First Order. And he brings up a little schematic where he's like, oh yeah, he's selling to the bad guys. He uses the term bad guys too. He has stutters, which I love that they added a stutter to him. But anyway, he's scrolling through, and all of a sudden he goes to this image, shows an X-Wing. He's like, and apparently the good guys too. And he's showing that it's all one big machine. So he's a very jaded character. You get that immediately, but I wish we had more screen time with this character, because this character is really fascinating to me. I like a character that recognizes the machine in the world, and recognizes kind of what's really going on, and understands that people are profiting off of this war that don't have any sort of like emotional or idealistic attachment to anything. And it's a real life thing. We see tons of coups and revolutions that are supported by outside forces that don't have any interest. They're there to make a buck. And so his character is very grounded in that. He's going to help them try to disable the lightspeed tracker. So meanwhile, while Leia gets injured during the initial space fight with the First Order, she appoints Holda over the rebels while she's basically healing, and that's where the command goes to. And she's basically, making this idea that they're going to run all the way to this rebel base that's old school from back in the day. But here's the thing. She doesn't tell anyone at all, about the plan. They just assume that she's running them out of gas just to run them out of gas, because as a viewer, that's all you see. And so, yeah, you think she's a baddie because she's just running them out of gas, or idiotic, one of the two. So, yeah, she comes off like a baddie because they badly show her character. They show Poe Dameron as this resistance fighter who's trying to, and they expect us to kind of go, oh, well, yeah, we probably shouldn't, judge someone just based off what we think of them. But she didn't give any evidence to the contrary. I was totally with Poe when he's trying to perform a mutiny and stop her actions. So she reveals her plan. Leia ends up actually shooting Poe, which is kind of funny, to stop the whole mutiny, the rebellion within the rebellion, to show them that really Holda was just trying to get them to a safe spot. So what follows is one of the coolest scenes I've seen so far in Star Wars. As they're trying to escape in these unmanned, unshielded transports to the rebel base from the main ship, the Empire starts taking out transports. And because of that, Holda has to make a hard decision, and that hard decision is pretty straightforward. She turns around the ship, the main cruiser, the Mount Calamari cruiser, and does basically a lightspeed jump and into Imperial forces, basically crashing half of her ship and ripping apart most of the Imperial fleet, including Snoke's ship, which is just a brilliant, really well done shot scene. You feel a little sacrifice. The only problem is, once again, the sacrifice doesn't really feel that much because you spent the last 30 minutes not liking this character because she's a baddie. Once again, poor decision in my idea. It lacked the emotional punch it needed for a sacrifice of that magnitude. Akbar reference, by the way. While all that I just explained is happening, Rey finally gets all the guys she needs from Luke. She runs back to Rebel fleet and is trying to turn Kylo Ren because she believes she can turn him, and doesn't really turn out the way she plans, as Luke warned her. Ren does turn on Snoke. He turns the heck on Snoke. He slices Snoke in half, which I thought was just brilliant. I had spent so long theorizing about who Snoke was. What is he going to do? And then he ends up just getting removed, and Ren takes over, which I think is either really the dumbest move they ever decided to do, or the smartest move. This could be an instance like the garbage pile that is the prequels did, where they killed off Maul before he became a serious character, which I thought was the dumbest move they, besides making the prequels the way they made them, they could have done. Or it could be really brilliant, because no longer do we have a third overseeing the dark side. No, we don't need a third character. We can do just Kylo Ren now. I mean, it works. The Sith are done. Kylo Ren has killed the Sith, basically. Now, the Jedi are pretty much done. Speaking of that, we have a very cool, yet kind of meh scene, where Luke indecisively wants to burn down the Jedi tree with a Jedi text. So Yoda shows up, Force Yoda shows up, and burns it down for him with a lightning bolt, which is interesting. But once again, it's a scene that I think was supposed to carry a large emotional punch, and I just wasn't really feeling it. It didn't make me feel it. I didn't, the Jedi were something that I saw a lot of fault with, and I kind of agreed with Luke and with Yoda's decision to take out the Jedi tree, if you will. While all that's going on, we also have Kylo Ren and Rey, after they fight together, which is just a really fun scene, and take out the Praetorian Guards and everything. The main thing that happens is Kylo asks her to join him and rule the galaxy together. No more Jedi, no more Sith, just us ruling the galaxy. And she asked him, please don't do this. Now that scene, it had a little bit of emotional punch because you built up the character. Unlike what they did with the Jedi tree and Space Vegas. When you build something well, it tends to have an emotional punch. So they get in sort of basically a fight. And it reveals something about Rey's character. The question we've all been wanting to ask. Who's Rey's parents? And for so long, I thought it was going to be Solo. I really wanted it to not be Solo. I wanted it to not be Skywalker. I wanted it to be Palpatine or no one. And they made no one, which is beautiful in that it brings the idea of the Force back to not something that you're born with or genetic trait or with this midichlorians, which is the dumbest thing. I hate you, George Lucas, so much. It brings it back to the mystical Force it was. It's not this thing that can be really understood. It's a thing that has to be felt in each of us, which is sort of the point of the Force. And I love how they brought that back. You have literally someone that's born from no lineage at all, taking on individual of a very, very powerful lineage, quote unquote, as well. So, very cool thing I thought they did with the parentage. I thought the idea was very solid. That they keep her parents basically no one, which is beautiful. The last sort of final thing is the rebels at this point are trapped in this base. Finn and Rose are captured. They're turned on traitor by Benicio del Toro's character, which I thought was good. I liked that. That he basically cut a deal so that, he figured out what's going on. He knew what he needed to do, and he said, what, I have no ties to this rebellion. These people are just these idealistic idiots. They're going to be taken by somebody who's make money. I'm at least going to survive. And so he cuts a deal. But anyway, they end up escaping, and they go to this hidden rebel base, like behind this shield. What follows is a cool little space fight, and they try to, once again, Death Star tech. Yay, so we haven't seen that enough. where they can bore a hole in the base. So it seems like all hope is lost, and all of a sudden, Luke comes walking up, and you're like, yeah, Luke, yeah, it's gonna be awesome, right? He talks to Leia, and he goes out there, and he faces down like 18 AT-AT revised. I don't know what they are, but AT-AT, I guess the super AT-ATs. They fire like every piece of firepower they've got at it, and it's just like he just takes it all, and comes walking through like it's nothing, brushes off his shirt and everything. So Kylo Ren's just infuriated, all seething with rage and being like a giant man-child. It comes down and meets him in hand-to-hand combat. They have a pretty cool duel. I don't care a lot for the flashiness of that particular duel. I like the lightsaber fighting that Vader used at the end of Rogue One. That's what I think of when I think of lightsaber fights, but whatever. So they have this cool little duel, and Kylo Ren comes running at him and slices him in half. But he doesn't. Here's why. Luke was using basically a Force apparition that he had made. And it took everything in him, like literally everything out of him to do it. From back on Tython, he's sitting there fighting him with this Force apparition. And basically all it was a ploy to stall Kylo Ren long enough where the rebellion could get rescued by Rey, who's flying around the Millennium Falcon. She's escaped from Snoke's ship. Chewie's come back and picked her up. He basically makes that sacrifice. He does that. It is a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice of good magnitude, but it's a sacrifice that leaves you kind of gratified at the same time. He's sitting there, and at the end, he's floating, like doing all the Force Jedi float. I'm talking about with crossed legs and everything. And then he comes back down to a sitting position, and it has taken everything out of him. And so he eventually, basically, he has peace, he's found resolve, and he force like ghost, I guess. He disappears. Robes fall. Everyone dies. Anyway, Kylo Ren's seething mad, he's pissed off, and all this other stuff. You're left with this idea that, this small spark, they will build another rebellion. And the movie actually ends on a really cool scene. So, back when they were in Space Vegas, they ran across these small group of kids that were in the stables, and they're playing with these toys, and it's like something Mandarin, something in Mandalorian, or whatever language, who cares? Jedi Luke Skywalker, so you hear that, right? And this guy runs and interrupts him, so one kid runs away, and he has to go, I guess, sweep something. So he runs over there, Force grabs his broom. And I'm just like, oh, nice. And so he's sitting there sweeping, and he's looking off into the stars, just like freaking Luke Skywalker. And on his ring, his hand is that ring that shows, the Rebel Alliance. So it leaves us this nice metaphor of like, yeah, they're down to like 30 dudes in the Resistance. Like, that's it. Hardly any equipment. They're all escaping on the Millennium Falcon. They're having to restart from nothing. But that spark is there, that hope is still there, even though all this crap has happened. And it's sort of a beautiful way to end the film. So, I like the way they end the film. I still have some major gripes with the film. Once again, if you're going to have sacrifice scenes, build it up where I have a little sympathy for the character, where the sacrifice means something to me. If I see General who gives a crap sacrifice herself for, so-and-so after I spent 30 minutes hating her for being a bad guy, then who cares if she sacrificed herself? I have no emotional connection with the character. What is that supposed to mean to me? How does that provoke me? How does that make me think about this character? So down marks for that. Down marks for some of the scenes where you have humor. Don't like that. I like humor to be inherent. I like the situation to be inherently funny, regardless of lines. If the lines make it funny, or if it feels out of character for it to be funny, I don't like it. It comes off as humor, rather than just funny. Poorly inserted humor at that. So, I liked a lot of things about the film. I think it's one of the top ones. I still think Rogue One's a better film than this. I think Rogue One was a much more serious film. A film that had a much more gravitas to it. It had dealt with more serious themes. Yeah, you've got the rebellion, you've got these ideals, but they've also got a dark side too. You have to do dirty things to make things happen. I thought that was all excellent. I thought it was a good choice, and they kind of ignored most of that with the exception of Benicio del Toro's character, which is the reason I like that character so much. I want to see him more, hopefully more of him in the next film. I like they've introduced another character that is not a white, a little bit more diversity is nice. Rose, she's a good character so far. I really liked what she did. I liked the whole setup with her sister that we weren't even thinking about. We weren't getting ready for an emotional connection, and bam, emotional connection. Hits you right in the heartstrings, Very well done. I mean, overall, good film. Would I pay full price for it? Probably not. I'd pay matinee for it, which is my ranking system, which I'll upload a video explaining that. So, hope y'all enjoyed it. Go out and see it. It's definitely worth a watch. Thank y'all for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share it. Show a couple friends this video. Maybe they'll like it. Plus, I'll get more views. Anyway, catch you on the flip side, Jaybirds.